Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, continuing our series of short videos on Warhammer the Old World as we wrap up ready for our High Elf faction focus. I thought we'd kind of finish off with looking at what the cheapest armies to buy currently are based upon September 2024. So that means we've got 5 fully released core factions, which are the Warriors of Chaos, the Orcs and Goblins, the Tomb Kings, Bretonnians, and the Dwarves. So as we go into the next slide here, I will take a look and see kind of how we sort of came to this conclusion. So here we are. So all army lists here are based upon a 2,500 point army. Now, I know you can play at 1,000 points, 1,500 points, and so on, but this kind of gives you, one, a broad breadth of kind of models, so you kind of account for a lot of different pricing in there. It also, for me, I think 2,500 points is like a really good goal to reach because I think the game plays really nicely at 2,500 points. I actually prefer it at that points level to 2,000 points, which I think is kind of a bit finicky with how you can take one of these models per 1,000 points, whereas 2,500 points just pushes it a bit more, and that's how I prefer it. So in terms of Bretonnia and Dwarves, we've actually done a faction focus, and the army lists that are listed here, the 2 lists, are in those faction focus videos. So if you go and check out the Bretonnia or Dwarves faction focus series, at the end of the series you'll see there is an army list 1 and 2, and that is what the prices are based upon. The Orcs, Goblins, Tomb Kings, and Warriors of Chaos faction focuses haven't been done yet, but these army lists will come as part of that faction focus series when we get to them. So that will kind of give you a flavour of what is in these lists. And I've kind of given a flavour as well, a bit of a description about how the list has been built and what's in there. But it is a 2,500 point army list. So Bretonnia then. Army list 1. It's a bit of an all-rounders list, kind of a bit based upon what you get in that starter box. You've got a bit of cavalry, you've got your Duke in there, you've got your men-at-arms, your bowmen, Pegasus Knights, and so on. So you kind of got a bit of everything. Now, in that list, that 2,500 point army would set you back $996 in total. And then if we take a look at Army List 2, now this is a cavalry focus list, so we've got a lot of different cavalry in there: Questing Knights, Grail Knights, Knights of the Realm, Knights Errant, Pegasus Knights, and so on. That cavalry focus list, as expected, it is going to be slightly more expensive, but does come in at $1,076. So that gives an average price across the 2 lists of $1,036. So if you want a 2,500 point army, that's about what it's going to set you back for Bretonnia. Okay, so let's take a look at Dwarves. So we've got Army List 1. This is a large infantry block focus. So, you've got your hammerers, your iron breakers, all of that sort of stuff. You've got quarrelers in there. So a lot of infantry focus. You've got a couple of war machines in there, but it's not crazy. So that coming in at $816. So actually quite a bit cheaper for that same 2,500 points as opposed to Bretonnia. Then we take a look at Army List 2. Now, this is very much a gunline list, so you've got plenty of war machines in there, organ guns, cannons, missile infantry, quite a few gyrocopters in there as well, supporting engineers and so on. That comes out at $889, which would give you an average price of $852.5 for a 2,500 point list. So you can see there, nearly $200 on average cheaper than a Bretonnian army. Okay, so Orcs and Goblins then. Army List 1, a bit of everything, very much tailored for me, which is Black Orcs, Night Goblins, Boar Boys, War Machines. So that's kind of where I focus. I do like my mix of Night Goblins and Black Orcs. That currently coming out at $894.75. And Army List 2, which is an all-Night Goblin list, but does include things like Wolf Riders, it includes Chariots, it includes a Ragnarok Spider, it includes War Machines. That currently coming out at $944, giving you an average price there of $919. So still a bit cheaper than the Bretonnian list. But bearing in mind, the Bretonnian list and the Tomb Kings do have the biggest savings to be made when buying those starter boxes, but might not necessarily get you all the things that you want, or certainly there might be some things that you don't want, I should say. So, for example, none of my Tomb King lists include the Skeleton Horseman. In terms of the Bretonnian one, however, one of the lists doesn't include the Men-at-Arms, but the other one does. So Bretonnia does give you some pretty good savings in there. Okay, so let's move on to the Tomb Kings. So Tomb Kings, then Army List 1. It's a Tomb Guard and Construct heavy list. So we've got plenty of Ashabti in there. We've got the War Sphinx. We've got Necro Sphinx in there. So you've got all your monsters and stuff. So that's coming in currently at $1,069. And then Army List 2 is quite a snake heavy list. We've got Sepulchral Stalkers in there. We've got a couple of units of Necropolis Knights, along with all the core and everything else. And a couple of skeleton Screaming Catapults in there. So that currently comes in at $1,005. So that gives you an average price for the Tomb Kings of $1,037. So you can see that Bretonnia and Tomb Kings average price pretty much the same. But you do have the starter boxes with big savings. But as I said, if you look at the Tomb Kings list, you know, there's actually a lot of stuff in those Tomb King lists, in that Tomb King starter box, that I don't want. So, whereas the Bretonnian one kind of being a little bit better off. Warriors of Chaos, though, Army List 1, you know, you got Lord and a Monster, you got very heavy on Warriors, Chosen, Knights, all that good stuff, currently coming in at $722. And then you've got Army List 2, which is a much more sort of heavy on Chaos Knights, on monsters, with some Hell Cannons in there to give a different flavor, currently coming at $676. So actually, the Warriors of Chaos there coming in at $699 on average for a 2,500 point army. So the Warriors of Chaos, and this isn't unexpected, right? The Warriors of Chaos very much more an elite army. Stuff's more expensive. So, you know, that doesn't surprise me at all. So in terms of if you're strapped for a budget and you want to get into Warhammer the Old World, right now, based upon the factions are available, while the starter boxes offer great savings values, and of course you get the rule book and stuff, the Warriors of Chaos is the cheapest faction to put on the tabletop. Absolutely, without a doubt. And that's just because of the cost versus points value of their units. When we take a look at the others, Dwarves, Orcs and Goblins, you know, again, you can build a really expensive list by choosing the most expensive things you can buy and spamming it. But on an average list with a bit of variety in it, Dwarves and Orcs and Goblins not too far away, about $50 apart for that 2,500 point list. So they come in the next cheapest area. And of course, Bretonnia and Tomb Kings there coming in as currently the most expensive armies. And if we actually look, you know, the difference between getting 2,500 points of Warriors of Chaos on average at $700 and the Tomb Kings there at $1,037. That's a $337 difference, which is massive when you actually consider what that's getting you. So, you know, the difference between a person that wants to play Warriors of Chaos and the person who wants to play Tomb Kings in terms of how much they have to spend is quite significantly different. So just, again, a short video trying to shed some light on factions, particularly if you're sat there currently undecided about what faction you want to get into. Everyone has different things they have to take into account when they're getting into a hobby or buying a new faction, which is, do they like the look of the faction? Do they like the look how it plays? Are they an inexperienced player? They want to go for an easier faction? Or is your main limitation your budget, which I would have to say is for most people, including myself, is, you know, how much do things cost? You know, I want to get a 2,000 point army, you know, to play with my friends, or 2,500 point army, but I don't have the budget to go to $1,000. That's quite a lot of money. Now, in most cases, people aren't buying a 2,500 point army on day one. You build it up over time. But even building it up over time, Warriors of Chaos are still the cheapest army to put on the tabletop, followed by the Dwarves and then Orcs and Goblins. So, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, please hit that subscribe button. It is totally free for you to do, but it is a big, big deal for me, so thank you for that in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Dial. I'll see you all very, very soon with the High Elf faction focus very, very imminent.